I was on during the debate, and I think after the debate, I got caught up in basically an unwinnable scenario where there's a lot of loaded questions, and you let somebody frame your narrative, so it's hard for you to really get your point across when the narrative's been framed for you. So you're already fighting at a disadvantage. So I'm going to basically rehash some things. But before we get into that, I'm going to talk about democracy. At a very, very simple level, how does democracy work? The idea is that you have a group of people who share, needs and interests that group together and collectively come up with some kind of decision, right? That'll basically be done for the benefit of, most people involved. And I notice I said most, not all, because obviously there'll be a minority, there'll be dissenting opinions, yada, yada. But just to put this in perspective, why are Democrats generally good on social issues? Why do they pretend to care about racism or sexism? Why do they bother speaking in like I feel your pain language, or like I care about the working class and I care about people just like you? Why do they bother speaking like that and having that rhetoric? The reason why they bother doing that is because they understand that that's the type of rhetoric that they need to win election. That is the type of voter, the voter that's vulnerable to that rhetoric, the voter that feels like that rhetoric represents what they want. That is the voter they want to vote for them. So when they're doing that, what they're doing is making a calculation. By saying X, or by holding these positions, these many people will vote for me and I can win election. Literally that's what they're doing all the time. That's how you see them shift on things. That's how you see them change their position. Say, well, you didn't really understand me, 8 years ago when I said that. When really all it was the inputs in their equation have changed. And so they change their outcome, right? That's generally like almost like a corrective factor in democracy, right? If you're unpopular and you hold unpopular positions, you cease to be able to have the requisite number of votes to hold office, and somebody replaces you whose views are more in line with the populace. It's just a democratic corrective. I call it a corrective factor. So what happens when that corrective factor is taken out of the picture? What happens when you start saying, I'm not going to vote for you based off of the values that I believe that you hold or the values that I want to see in my elected officials. I'm going to vote for you because I don't like the other person. What happens when we have something like that? What happens to the democracy? What happens to a democracy when it doesn't have that corrective factor? I honestly, I know the answer. I'm asking rhetorically, but really, I know the answer. The democracy decays. And it just so happens that if you look at our democracy right now, it appears to be in full decay. And it's been that way for some time. And each cycle, it just gets worse and worse and worse. I saw a post on Facebook one time where they went back and they went through all the presidents, and they talked about the two-party system. Their goal is to basically get you to be against the two-party system. And I'm amenable to that argument, right? But it said 56 years of change deferred. And it had like president after president. Oh no, we can't vote for what we want because we need to defeat this person. Or, oh no, we can't vote for what we want because we need to defeat this person. And each time that same scenario plays out over and over and over again. But that real change is always deferred. It's deferred time and time again. And it's just like, I preach about it on this show almost every time I do a show. You can't defer any longer. At this point, we need to start building something that's going to get the change today. We need to fight for the change today, not tomorrow. And if we lose, that's fine. Sometimes you will lose, but you can't not do anything because you're afraid to lose. There's old adages that go on, forever and ever. Like, you can't win if you don't play. You can't win if you don't play. So let's take this election, Trump versus Hillary Clinton. You know, do either of these candidates really represent, the positions that a majority of Americans would like to see? We have a majority of Americans that would like to see public college be made, at the very minimum, super affordable. At the very minimum. We have large majorities that want to see a jobs-based program of direct spending by the government. They want to see massive infrastructure spending to replace our failing infrastructure. And, you can go down the line, but there's also majorities that do want a single payer healthcare system put in place. And yet these majoritarian arguments are made, and neither of these candidates are really representing that. We have one candidate who says, I feel your pain, but all that stuff is just a cake dream, and that's not how the world works. You should just accept what it is here today. And we have another candidate that says, I feel your pain, and then proceeds to prescribe, policies that wouldn't necessarily help the situation. So where are the majoritarian ideas? Where are the politicians that are going to listen to the public and actually implement the public's will into their policy platform? Well, largely those parties are marginalized and kept out of the debate so that they can't express those ideas in front of the larger audience. I believe that this first presidential debate had a huge audience, and there was a huge vested interest in making sure that the third parties, and I shouldn't even say third parties, really it's the marginalized parties, because third implies the third one, like one, but there's really multiple. There's multiple candidates across the country, but the outside parties were not allowed to use the debate stage to put forth their ideas, primarily because they're going to put up majoritarian arguments that people are going to listen to and want. And if they don't necessarily win the debate in the establishment eyes or whatnot, people are going to see that, and they're going to realize that it is possible to have what they want, and they're going to start flocking towards that. And you're going to see the main parties start to lose support unless they change, and they don't want to change. They're perfectly fine just where they are. But originally my point was, when you start doing that lesser to evilism, you start to lose the democratic corrective factor. And now you're in a situation where you're not necessarily voting for what you want. You're voting for, what you don't want, or you're voting against something that you don't want. But in our particular situation, where we're faced with, basically the rise of corporate power manifest as neoliberalism, or basically as some sort of neoconservatism that's generally the same thing, but with, broader social implications, you're really kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And that will always be where we are until we break the cycle. And part of that is going to be supporting those parties, or going out into the political wilderness and not knowing where you're going to be. Maybe being out there and be the fringe for 10 years or so. But the nature of our system and the way that they do their politics will eventually lend itself to more and more people feeling disenfranchised. And you need to reach those people and change those minds. But as far as I'm concerned, until we're ready to go to that point, we really can't make the change that we're trying to see. We're just stuck in the same cycle. We're just deferring change, basically. We're deferring action to the next generation, or deferring it to the next election, deferring it to the next election. Whenever somebody talks about the presidential election, they say, well, really the down ballot races matter. You get down to the down ballot, well, really this matters or that matters, or we need to work on, building for the next election. Everything is always deferred. Why not today? Why not now? Because you're really not going to start making progress until you start doing things that are going to lend itself towards that actual progress. You can't say that if you believe in climate change, you're going to vote for someone who does not share that position. They don't believe in climate change, or better yet, you want meaningful action on climate change, and everybody is not offering meaningful action. So you have to vote from amongst the choices that are given to you. Perhaps that's the problem. If no one's doing a meaningful action on issues that are important to you, you probably shouldn't vote for anybody up there. And anything less than that is not utilizing the democratic process to its full effect. You're not, acting as part of the corrective that you're supposed to have in a democracy. Like, if we want to get rid of corporatism, if we want to get rid of crony capitalism, if you want to get rid of, the undue influence of corporations in politics, you can't do that by voting for the corporate candidate. The candidate that the corporations are most familiar with, the candidates that the corporations are most pleased with, because they've already invested. They have a list. They have a succession list. They know who needs to go where and who's going to be up next. They have that plan, 10, 15 years in advance before the media even turns their eye to the next election. They already have their seeds planted all across the United States. There's never going to be a situation where the neoliberal is not put up against something from the right, whatever that may be. Unless we call the neoliberals. You have to call them from the herd. And you can't do that by supporting them, because with every election that they win, every election that they stay strong. You're not doing anything by protesting them. You're not doing anything by talking a whole bunch of crap about them, because in all honesty, they don't care about that. They care about when you get in that voting booth, what are you going to do? You're going to pull the lever for D or R. And so long as you remain trapped in that mindset and trapped into that game, you're always going to lose. And so this is why I really want everybody to just kind of think about what they would like to see. And if a candidate is not doing that, if a candidate is not making meaningful progress on that, if a candidate says they want to make meaningful progress on something and you don't visibly see them doing it, not just the media campaign or the propaganda, like you don't physically see any real policies being enacted that would actually lead towards a result that you would like to see, you should probably not be supporting that candidate. If you challenge them and they don't have anything to say for it, you probably need to think about perhaps supporting someone else. So the end thought of all that ranting is just to say that the corporate candidate is not going to be the person that's going to help you, increase your wages or provide health care or cut their own profits in order to provide access to things that we need for everyday life for everybody, not just the people who can afford it. They're not going to do those things. So if those are your goals, you need to be basically supporting people that are making it their mission as a part of their policy platform to do those things. And I think right now what we see is, so far, neither of the mainstream candidates are there.